The NFL is an ever-changing league, especially in the year 2020. It's been a crazy year to say the least, and the NFL is, believe it or not, more than halfway over. While some rookies have yet to make an impact, or a big impact at least, others have flourished and have proven they will be in the NFL for a long time to come. We did a biggest takeaways video about week 9 on Monday, like we always do, and today is a realization video. We do these types of videos every few weeks to kind of reflect on what's been going on the past few weeks and what the future holds for specific teams or players. As you could see by today's thumbnail, we will at some point be discussing Justin Herbert and other NFL rookies. The NFL is in great hands with young stars they have on the rise, and we'll get to everything surrounding that and more. But before we get started, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now let's begin. And we begin today's video by discussing the Chicago Bears. I glanced over this topic during Monday's video, but I really want to get into the thick of what's wrong with this team. When looking at the Bears roster and what could go wrong, it is exactly what you would expect. Their offense is atrocious, and aside from Allen Robinson and occasionally Jimmy Graham, they really don't have much. The rest of the receivers they have not named Allen Robinson are players like Anthony Miller, Riley Ridley, and Darnell Mooney. The receiving core they have is probably bottom 5 or at bottom 10 at the best, and it definitely shows at times. They also have offensive weapon Cordero Patterson, who they routinely get the ball to, and while there's nothing wrong with occasionally targeting a player or a home run threat like Cordero is, it would probably be wise to stop doing so, as he is averaging just 3 yards per run and 6.1 yards per catch this year. While the Bears' skill position players outside of Robinson aren't great, it doesn't help that their offensive line is poor either. For as great as their defense is, all the Bears need to do is be average on offense. And as ironic as this is, given who's on their roster now, they don't need to have Patrick Mahomes to be a Super Bowl contender. Would that help? Obviously, but that's like saying, gee, would you rather have Barry Sanders as your running back or Trent Richardson? The Bears started out the year 5-1 and now sit at 5-4 with their season very much in question. They have been scolded and mocked for the past 3 years for taking Mitch over Mahomes and Deshaun, so I'm not getting into that, but what is the worst part for this team is they're in a bad position as a franchise. Their defense is good and will keep them in games, and in some cases be the reason they win, because they will keep opposing teams under 20 points. Conversely, their offense won't take them to the top and have them compete with a Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers led team. And you may give me an example of them beating either of them in the past few years, but I would counter with, was it in the playoffs with everything on the line? Which of course the answer is no. They're 5-4 at this moment in time, and with a quarterback class as loaded as this one is, I would imagine they select one in the first round. The issue they'll run into, though, is not that it won't be Trevor, because they're obviously not going to pick him, but that they'll be drafting around the 16 to 20 mark and won't get a top 2 or 3 quarterback. If you haven't been paying attention to the draft, which I fully understand, as some people don't like to get into it until January, then I would like to politely inform you there will be 5 if not 6 quarterbacks drafted in the first round this year. This is a chance to be one of the best quarterback classes ever, and Chicago could finally get their guy. For now though, they're stuck in between mediocrity and good, because they're certainly not a bad team by any means, but they're certainly not a great team either. And the next realization is the NFC is way more wide open than we originally thought. First things first when we discuss this. Credit, and I can't say this enough as I've read the comments recently, but credit to the New Orleans Saints for absolutely dismantling the Bucs on Sunday Night Football in front of America to see. Not only that, but with how the Seahawks played in Buffalo on Sunday definitely proves there's significant chinks in their armor too. Green Bay is 6-2 with losses to only Tampa and Minnesota of all teams, but with them, it's a matter of can they beat good teams when called upon. Over the last 2 years, the answer is no, and when they're put against the elite of the elite, they have failed. They beat the Saints back in Week 3 without Michael Thomas, who in turn beat the Buccaneers, who in turn beat the Packers. This will be very entertaining to see how all this plays out in January, but heading into the weekend, I thought Tampa was the favorite to win the NFC, and while they still can, don't get me wrong, they're certainly not as much of a favorite as I once thought they were. However, what I will say about the NFC is I think it comes down to 4 teams, which obviously are the ones we've discussed so far. The Cardinals are going to be good in the future, and while they could very well make noise this year, they are not viewed as a serious NFC contender yet. And while the Dolphins are a respectable, good NFL team, I want to get that clear, any legitimate Super Bowl contending team should be able to take care of business and beat them in their own stadium. Outside of those top 4, there's really no teams that I could see make a surprise run and get to Tampa in February. If you're thinking potentially the Rams, I'll go ahead and address them. First, I don't think they're going to win the NFC West, so that means they would have to be a 5-7 wildcard team. Now, they're obviously not a bad team, but I would propose the question and ask, do you think they can win 3 straight road games and get to the Super Bowl by going into a combination of Philly, and not that that's that much, but then Tampa and Seattle, or a few mixtures of combinations like Green Bay and New Orleans, or however, but you get my point. They could very well beat the Eagles assuming they win the NFC East, and maybe squeak a win out in the divisional round, but I don't think they could run the table and go 3 in a row. And if they would, then they have any loaded AFC team waiting for them. But for the sake of this video, I think the top 4 NFC teams are set, and ultimately, whoever wins the NFC South is in the driver's seat, and it will be much more critical because of the age of Tom and Drew. If either of those teams get the bye week and get the rest that they need, it could prove to be the difference between a divisional round exit and a Super Bowl appearance. And the next realization, and I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers with this take, but just hear me out on this one. Cam Newton will never be a good quarterback for the Patriots, and a lot of it is completely out of his control. He's not a great quarterback anymore by any means, but you also can't tell me he's as bad as he's been in all of 2020 either. He has just 2 passing touchdowns on the year to 7 interceptions, and hasn't thrown a touchdown pass since late September. Rushing, on the other hand, is where he's been great, as he is on pace to have 18 rushing touchdowns, which would be a career high for him. But for the sake of this video, the Patriots simply are not good offensively, and it is not fully on Cam, to be clear. It's not like they have Devontae Adams and Julio Jones as wideouts with Jamarcus Russell as the quarterback. No, it's far from that. N'Keal Harry at this point in time, who is a former first-round pick by the way, is a draft bust, and really that's all there is to it. The usual saying is we'll know about a player after 3 years after they've been drafted, but I think it's fair to say he is a bust now. He has 31 catches in 13 games played across 2 seasons, and has just 277 career receiving yards. And although Julian Edelman has been injured for a few weeks now, he simply wasn't the same player in 2020 as he was in 2019. And when your top 2 receivers are not good, what exactly do you think is going to happen to the quarterback? It's going about as good as you would expect, and largely because of that, Cam will never be a good quarterback in New England. And what's unfortunate for Cam is his leash will be short after this year, and they're simply not going to rebuild around him, as he is above 30 years old, and New England, with the way their season is going, will have a high draft pick, and more than likely, Cam Newton will be out the door. And the final realization halfway through the NFL season is we are in great hands with the 2020 quarterback draft class. Joe Burrow is a great player on the rise, as he is on pace to throw for over 4,500 yards and 22 touchdowns as a rookie. For him and the Bengals specifically though, they were never really expected to compete for the AFC North title this year, and if you thought Joe Burrow would go from the national championship to the Super Bowl in a year, well, just being honest, this isn't Madden face of the franchise. They play in an incredibly difficult division with both the Steelers and Ravens, so what would be the best case scenario for the Bengals this year is they go something like 6-10 or 7-9 and compete in mostly every game. As long as they don't get blown out, it is a positive for them. And for Joe's health, the best case would really to be, and I'm joking when I say this, but go 1-15 and lose every game close so they can 100% draft Penei Sewell out of Oregon. And for those that don't know, Penei is a phenomenal offensive tackle prospect and is looked at the best one in a few years, tackle-wise that is. Anyways, Joe Burrow to T. Higgins will be something to keep an eye on for the next few years, as T has nearly 500 yards receiving in 7 games, and his current 16-game projected stats is 75 catches for over 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns. He is having a great rookie season, and these two will be something to keep an eye on for several years to come. Also, if you can get your hands on them in a dynasty league through a trade, I would recommend doing so, as it's only going to get better with time. And the next quarterback that was drafted was Tua Tagovailoa, and based on Sunday, he looks to be a star in his own rights. Now, last Sunday against the Rams, he didn't play good, and I'll admit that, and this could very well be a huge overreaction, as I think it's fair to say that fans and analysts want the best for players and want them to do well. I'm no exception to this, and I do want Tua to do well, and I really do think he will in Miami. The Dolphins have 2 first-round picks in 2021, and more than likely will be using one in a receiver, as the Dolphins receivers aren't great or a top 5 weapon group in the NFL by any means, and pairing Tua with a player like Jamar Chase, if he's available, out of LSU would be very fun to watch over the next half-decade. The first Tua versus Justin Herbert game will be Sunday, and the first Tua versus Joe Burrow game will be in a few weeks. Now, what's going to be fun about this class is these guys will more than likely be in the AFC for a long while and will be competing against each other for their NFL careers. Now, that's obviously way down the road, but these guys as of now are all going to be good, and Justin Herbert is certainly no exception. The Chargers were ridiculed for the selection of him, and every week, Herbert proves the draft analysts more wrong. Some questioned his decision to go back to Oregon for his senior year in 2019, but at this point in time, it doesn't matter. Herbert is on a 16-game pace right now to throw for 4,900 yards and 39 touchdown passes to just 11 interceptions, which for any player, let alone an NFL rookie in the middle of a crazy offseason due to a worldwide pandemic, is absolutely insane. I really hope these 3 guys can stay healthy for the test of time, because the playoff matchups during the 20s, the decade that is, could be legendary. They'll have Patrick Mahomes waiting for them in several of those games, and based on how it's looking now, Trevor Lawrence will soon be added to a loaded conference of AFC quarterbacks. And with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Each only take a second to do. I can't reiterate enough how much the support is truly appreciated, and I will talk to you guys soon. Have a great day.